Thank you, Wendy. Any other of the panelist members want to comment on again, maybe some of the initiatives that are currently happening as well within your organizations that can speak to some of, getting started?
I think I could speak to what are the things that you could look for, right? So once you've gotten your sort of slate of places that you want to be looking, what does the diversity program offer? We've tried to do something that's somewhat organic while also structured, right? So our employee resource groups are where the heart and soul of our diversity program is born. And those groups have been tasked not just to sort of coordinate the events that help us feel good about, who we are. That's part of it. But the other part of it is we're trying to do research. What kind of partnerships can we deliver? What does the community really need from us in order to be able to make it better for Geotabers, right? And anybody who is being interested in coming to work for us. It really is a matter of, you've got to have a structure to the ERGs that actually does something, as opposed to, just be present.
I can add a little bit as well, just more around the topic of getting into the field. And if you are indeed interested in roles in diversity belonging in the tech field, it's one thing, lots of folks are excited about this right now. This is something that, although is very much in our faces right now, it has been going on for generations and for hundreds of years. So there are generations of people who have been affected by racist, exclusionary policies. And so I think, it's one thing to come to the table and be super passionate. And that's important. You have to be passionate about this work because it's hard work. And so you have to know how to take care of yourself. You have to know how to take breaks and ensure that you can work through, through the work that is hard. Also important to note is, although, passion and drive about these particular issues and barriers that exist and wanting to just reduce these systemic barriers is fantastic and necessary, you also must be able to do the work. So having those skills to be able to project manage, to engage in stakeholder engagement, to negotiate, because a lot of this work does take convincing, because everyone is on a different level of their journey in allyship and understanding anti-racism and equality versus equity, all of these different topics. So it, coming to the table when research, you can't hear me? You can okay. Hear me now. Okay, thank you. You must research in advance sort of what is the company already saying in terms of their commitments to diversity, and how can you, based on your skills and what you have, match what it is that you see as being their goals? Or can you potentially exist? So for example, Shopify has a sustainability report. We produce a sustainability report every year, which covers everything from our commitment to environment, to diversity and inclusion, to social impact, education for entrepreneurs and for underrepresented youth. Go through these documents, figure out what speaks to you in terms of your passions, but also where do your skills fit in? How can you help further that team's goals of achieving whatever it is they're achieving?
Yeah, and to add to that, I think, what Crystal was saying, I think another piece that a lot of people sort of, I think for the D&I space, at least, one of the most important, areas for me is leading with empathy. I think that's a big piece that we need to also think about, and that's quote unquote a soft skill that people don't think about, but it's so crucial in a role that's leading D&I. And I say that because while we're all passionate about this work, and while passion is really important, like Crystal said, leading with empathy is so critical, because it's understanding that everyone is on a journey, and that they might not be at the same point you are at, or they might be further along, but they might be just beginning, or they might not want to join the journey. They might just be like, nope, I don't want to do this. I can't. And as an empathetic leader, you have to understand that that person just is where they're at, and meet them where they're at, opposed to forcing them along. And I think that's really important, to be able to showcase that you have led with empathy in previous ways, and how you've showcased that. I think that's an important skill set when you're thinking about D&I in any workforce, whether it's in tech or wherever it is. But I think leading with empathy is something that is not talked about enough.
I can add 2 stories. I think a student who joined the session, they might, one way or another, belong to a diverse community, might have experienced some challenges in your job search, right? And maybe because your diverse background, you haven't had the opportunity to build a very, very shining resume, because the chances are taken. Say if you're someone with a disability, maybe you take care of your personal well-beings, while others are competing for those internships. So you don't have those on your resume. Before, when I was working in RBC, we were in conversation with a very, very interesting organization, and they basically invite anybody who's interested in IT roles to do just testing. They don't look at your resume. If you can do the job they ask for, you just come and prove yourself. So there are organizations like that. And I think I remember there's a big tech company just a while ago, on their job post, they say, we don't need any university degree, right? If you think about Bill Gates, didn't graduate. Steve Jobs didn't graduate. So if you, especially in the tech space, and I think in diversity now is the right time to really thrive. So you can look for those opportunities, you can prove yourself. You don't have to have those shining resume to be hired anymore. The other thing is that, be able to tell your story, right? If you have a diverse background, if you have some experiences that shows your strength and resilience, be able to share those stories. I worked with a student who I think he had a disability. He has some hearing impairment, and he's shared with me, especially coming from a community. I think he's Indian, and from the Indian community where disability is such a taboo, right? And it's so hard. It's hard for everybody, but coming from certain communities is extremely hard. So I encourage him, why don't you write your story and share on LinkedIn? So it turned out to be a very success story, because he had the courage to share his story and how he faced his challenges. He was able to attract not only help some other students, of course, but also attract some recruiters' attention, and successfully landed an internship. So those things are, never think you're a student and the impact you're able to make would be too small. So you are also able to make that impact as long as you show your strength and resilience.
That's a really great point, Vivian. Thank you. And coming from someone who has spent my career back in coaching and coaching students, I think one of the biggest pieces I tell students all the time is exactly what you said, is don't underestimate what you have actually already accomplished. As a student, I sort of, my tagline is play your student card as long as you can, right? What have you done as a student? These managers, these recruiters, us as a campus team, right? We're not expecting you to have X number of years of experience in a particular tool. If we did, we would not be hiring at a student level. We'd be looking at a more experienced professional, right? But we want to know where have you applied some of your skills? Be proud of what you've done and showcase that. So which sort of leads me to my next question, that maybe we can expand on this a little bit. Can the panelist members talk about, within your own organizations, maybe some examples of how you are encouraging some of our diverse students and diverse groups to engage with the organization outside of recruitment? So, so how are we connecting? So things like this, right? This is amazing. We're all here today. We're all here showcasing, but any other programs, initiatives that are, students can look out for, and you would encourage them to get involved?
I can I can start. I mean, one thing right now is that the government has put enormous amount of money into opportunities for students and wage subsidies and various other things. So I stuck some links on the chat of programs. The Student Workplace Placement Program, for example, will pay for 50% of a student salary, or 75% if the student is a woman in tech, someone who's Black or racialized, Indigenous, or with a disability. And a lot of employers, frankly, especially small, medium enterprises, don't actually know about those programs. So trying to find ways to get experience in the workplace, hugely important. But there are other things, you know, I'm a couch potato inveterate, proud of it. But without question, sports are a way that builds teamwork, all kinds of interpersonal skills. There's lots of evidence that women in leadership very often have played sports. And so thinking creatively about things that you've done, we know that there's huge socioeconomic barriers, for example, to some groups in participating in volunteer work. Like, my kid want to go to law school, I'm going to sign her up for all the stuff she needs. She's going to have networks with judges, lawyers, whatever. I mean, if you're working 30 hours a week to help pay your family rent and going to school, there are things that you have learned to do that are different. And, you know, there's a book called The Privilege of Poverty. Someone, I forget her name, a doctor at U of T, said, you know, why is it that working in a soup kitchen is considered good experience to be a doctor, but growing up poor isn't? Having had to overcome challenges in a variety, you know, coming to Canada as a refugee or a child of a refugee, or, you know, putting yourself through school, there are lots of experiences you may have in your personal life that demonstrate grit. And it's not about telling those stories in order to get sympathy. It's about telling those stories to really show that you know how to problem solve, overcome challenges, people knock you down, you get back up again and you keep going. And really, I think, especially with employers now, a lot of them are looking for those kinds of traits and skills, as much as they're looking at whether or not you can, you know, do full stack Java development. So really looking inward and thinking about what it is that you can do that other people can't do because of your lived experience can be really valuable.
Something I can add is, as a student, when you work in an organization as an internal COP student, right? Never think that you have to be led, right? Have to be told to get involved in diversity initiatives. For example, you know, every month there are some diversity topics, like in June, Indigenous and Pride. And in the past, in our organization, a lot of the initiatives were led by students, because those are the summer months where students come to work as summer interns, and they would initiate something. Like in the Black History Month, they initiated something like support Black entrepreneurs. We need to buy from Black vendors. So they brought in the Black vendors to RBC, and they encourage everybody to shop among them. So you can bring in a lot of interesting ideas to the organization. Never think, okay, I'm just a student, I'm just here to learn. You can do reverse mentoring, and you can actually teach the senior management what is the next generation thinking about diversity. Maybe your concept of diversity and inclusion is totally different than the older generation. So they're here to learn, to listen. Just speak up for inclusion. Start from yourself.
I think if I could add to that too. So one of the things that particularly women, and I'm sure other disadvantaged communities would report, is the hardest thing that they've had to learn in their careers is around networking, and being able to do that with purpose and being able to understand what that means. And so, I mean, everybody who's watching today is taking one of the first steps, right? So many of us, like Wendy and I myself, we probably didn't do the conference thing until we were well entrenched in our careers, and we really had to learn networking on the fly, I'll say, and almost at a point of resistance. So my interns, so we've got several interns on our team. We've got one of them actually coordinating a regular talk for all of the interns so that they can all share their own experiences and all learn from one another. And it builds that sort of networking muscle for them. So the thing that I think my advice would be is, whether it's a career in tech or a career someplace else, or even just being involved in your company's diversity program, getting that networking muscle working is really the biggest transferable skill you can learn.
I would say, Michelle, you sort of asked for some company specific, like organization specific events. And, you know, back in the day, pre-COVID times, you know, we used to have meetups and things like that. They've since obviously moved online, you know, thrive on change. So, you know, of course, like sort of finding out where those communities, right? There are, when I was a recruiter for a while, recruiting for a variety of roles, and I discovered these rich communities of developers. I was hiring for some entry-level L4, L5 developers, and there are so many different communities that exist that you can meet up with and get involved in this networking thing. You know, slowly. It's sort of like getting your toe wet in a way, to start having discussions with other folks who could be in similar situations such as yourselves, having trouble finding jobs, understanding which companies are up and coming. You know.
Oh, we can't hear you.
Sorry, Chris. We've lost you, Crystal. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, you're muted now, maybe.
We can't hear you.
Well, yeah. Oh,
I think I'm back.
Yes.
there you go. There you go.
Gosh, wireless text stuff. Yeah, so long story short, I agree wholeheartedly with the networking piece. I understand and empathize that it can be very difficult to put yourself out there. I think the online opportunities have presented unique opportunities for folks who perhaps don't enjoy quite an in-person interaction. So there's that. When it comes to learning, so just quickly touching on learning opportunities, you know, I heard a previous speaker actually talk about lifelong learning and how important that is when he's, you know, going through this hiring process, and agreed 100%. That is in fact something we do look for at Shopify, folks who are passionate about learning, because so much of what happens, especially early on, is learning on the job. Again, because we do hire for potential. A lot of those harder skills are learned on the job. So we have a ton of programs that are focused on whether it's STEM or entrepreneurship. We have free programs available that folks can take at any time at your own leisure, including the Open Learning Program, Compass, our Help Center. We always recommend, again, with the empathy piece, Sophia, I love that you brought that up. It interplays in so many different facets here. At Shopify, you know, we're merchant obsessed. So everything we do is for our merchants. And so there's no better way to understand what our product is about and how it can impact like merchants' lives across the globe by setting up your own store. And it's free. So I would say diving into that company's culture and their product and their mission, and truly trying to develop a sense of understanding about what those hurdles are. What is the friction? What are the problems? Can you understand what the clients are going through from a personal perspective? Like, I think that is the best experience that you can bring to any interview and to any company, frankly. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, panels. These advice has been fantastic. And Wendy, thanks for all the resources that you're posting. I am mindful of the time. Students, if anybody has any questions, I think we have a few minutes until we move on to our next session. So please feel free to post your questions in the chat, or you can also request to share your audio and video if you so choose to. But yeah, please feel free to ask any questions of any of the panelist members, and happy to answer. But yeah, Wendy, 10,000 Coffees, fantastic resource. Many of the post-secondary education institutes have that built in terms of their student services. So highly, highly encourage. I know RBC, Vivian's big usage of 10,000 Coffees. Yeah. So maybe while we're just waiting for any questions coming in the chat, panelist members, any sort of overarching final thoughts you want to leave with the students as they, you know, we're approaching a new academic year in September. It's a bit of a hybrid, I'm going to say, not quite exactly what we saw last year, but not quite back to normal. We've talked about networking. We've talked about being, you know, adapting, resilient. Any other final comments or thoughts that you'd like to share?
I think one of the things I like to share is don't be afraid to be different. I think, you know, for me growing up, I wanted to be as white as possible with brown skin, but I would call myself a coconut. Brown on the outside, white on the inside, because I just wanted to be white. And, you know, now that I've grown older, much older and wiser, it was like, no, I want to be me. And I think that's important to also look at organizations that allow you to be authentically you. I think that is so important. And I think it's important to talk to others who are at the organizations who allow you to, you don't have to hide who you are, you know, whatever you do on the weekends. Say you have you know, a partner that you're able to openly speak about that. Every organization I've gone to, I've openly said, yeah, my wife and I, or my kids, or what have you, and just like I normalize the conversation. I think it's really important to normalize the conversation, and also just to authentically show up. I think it's important, and don't be afraid to be different, because different right now is what's in, and it's valued. And so, you know, that's how you can also showcase yourself is just being yourself and showing up.
I have an interloper who's snuck in the background. The couple of things that I think are really important. One is watch your social media presence, because it's one thing to be communicating with your friends. It's another thing to be communicating with an employer. And I think that is something that trips up a lot of young people. Watch your security settings. I do think that in the current environment, having a really good LinkedIn profile is an asset. And also, I think learning how to use things like LinkedIn effectively to connect with employers. I will almost never say no to someone who connects with me and says, I want an informational interview. I want to talk to you for 15 minutes about XYZ. But you have to be very clever about how you set that up. Like, you don't just pick someone, the president of RBC, and send them your CV. You have to be really strategic, do your homework, and so on. But I think that those kinds of tools can be invaluable in building the kind of connections. You know, asking someone for an introduction to someone else, asking someone for background on a particular company. My experience, people won't, for the most part, say no if you approach them in the appropriate way.
And that probably would, there's a few questions on the Q&A session, portion of this session, but that would have been one of the biggest mistakes, right? They have a poor social media presence. And because we live so much of our life online, it's very visible. But one of the other questions here was, have you faced any challenges in your personal life when it comes to navigating the workspace as a woman? Or I can tell you, I spend most of my meetings as the only woman in the room. Right. So I guess my only other advice that I was going to offer was sometimes we all feel different, right? And there is something that makes us all different. And so I guess to make sure that you don't go in with an assumption that you're the only one who is, right? So to Sophia's point, I've also lived very boldly, very, very transparently. I've kind of opened the kimono before I walk through the door, just so that it doesn't surprise people, right? That you are who you are, and now you can go up from here. If you live that courageously, you'll be much happier for it, I think.
And, you know, I'm not going to lie that I've been in rooms where I've said something and I've had a man repeat that and heard, whereas I've said it and it's been ignored. And the thing is, and yeah, sure, in the past I've been discouraged, but I think it's you just forge ahead, you keep going because you know you're competent. And there are times where you might have to prove yourselves. As you know, I've walked in, I'm the only queer, racialized individual, non-binary individual in the room, but who cares? And I think that's the piece, is like the only person that's going to care is me, and I have to leave that out and showcase what I have to offer. And I think that's the most important piece, is just you speak up and you continue to showcase what you have to offer, and don't let being a woman or being a person of color identify you. Like, that's not your sole identity. That's a part of your identity, but you have so much more to offer. And I think it's important to be able to continuously showcase what you do have to offer.
Amazing. Panelist members, thank you so much. I know this is a topic we can likely just spend the entire afternoon talking about and sharing advice. And students, I hope for all of you, you have found it just as valuable as I have. I know, apologies that we couldn't get to all the questions, but I think we've touched on some things, resources, you know, Wendy has shared, and some of the advice has come through the call. But the conference is up until tomorrow. So I do encourage students to feel free to reach out via the networking tab, or you can send direct messages via Hopin. I know that's an option as well. So please feel free to do that. And I know there's some networking opportunities as well tomorrow through the Expo tab. So please feel free, or take the advice that was shared today and implement that tomorrow and start to do that networking. But panelist members, again, thank you very, very much for your time, your insight, your advice, and the care that you've shown to be here today and to share, you know, your insights with the students. So on behalf of Geotab and CUTC, again, thank you for everything. Students, we hope we'll see you again, not just in this conference, but in future opportunities throughout the upcoming academic term. Thank you again, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thanks, panel members.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.